have detonated. Supposedly one of the creatures tried to stop the security personnel from entering the area, and
look at his hands. What could have did that? That looks like a clean beam. Am I tripping?
So these giants that made war with the Tartary kingdoms were commanded by the Zeta Greys to occupy and take over the lands.
Show you quite a bit of different Tartarian technological architecture, which are going to show you that they're engineered machines. Crafted, if you engineer it properly, and that gear is activated, then you have this machine.
Plain white.
That is living or have lived right under our feet is.
You better lock in and buckle up. Buckle, because you're in for another creepy and scary TikTok reaction video. If you haven't already, please hit that like and subscribe button, because we're diving into the most creepiest, scariest, disturbing, weird, strange theories all over TikTok and YouTube. These creepy and scary theories might just make you rethink your reality and keep you up all night. And remember, these videos are for entertainment purposes only. It's up to us to do our own research and distinguish fact from fiction. Without further ado, hyper mode, activate! Going quantum! Attention! Welcome to Dark Waters 9.
They've been keeping this from you. This is the underground city that was found beneath Los Angeles by a man named Warren Shufelt. It was discovered using a device he invented to detect underground tunnels and caverns. Shufelt mapped out a network of passageways stretching for miles beneath the city. And here is where it gets crazy. His maps indicated a central chamber filled with gold and advanced artifacts. Shufelt said that upon analysis of the artifacts and the scriptures found within the passageways, they all pointed to a lost continent named Lemuria. Despite his groundbreaking findings, city officials abruptly shut down his excavation. They officially claimed that the tunnels were old subway lines, but this is where they messed up. The Los Angeles subway system didn't begin operation until 1990, over 70 years after Schufelt's discovery. So what subway lines were they referring to? Some speculate that they were referring to an ancient civilization that had access to a subway-like system. Some have even gone further to say that the city officials had knowledge from the future. They knew that Los Angeles would eventually have a running subway system in the years to come, therefore it would be the perfect cover-up, perfectly concealing its true origins. They've been keeping this from you. This is the underground.
There's so much stuff they're hiding underground.
Have y'all ever took a look at the maps then and the maps now and what might be missing? You see, it's very interesting because back in the day, there weren't these restrictions of where you could and couldn't travel to. You know, like that Peace Treaty of Antarctica. Just look at these different maps. It's a lot more landmass up in the North Pole, right? That's what we're told it is. And look at this landmass below. Look at all of this. So can somebody please tell me what's going on here? Other than, oh, that's not a real map, it's fake, none of it has been proven if it's fake or not. But it's just very interesting that when you think about all of the worlds and all of these countries that have conflicts with each other, when it comes to certain land masses or areas on this earth, it's like a no-fly zone, and all of the countries are in agreement of that. Just take a look at these maps, y'all. What's going on here? You see, it's very interesting. Now, I always knew that the world is bigger than they tell us. How big, I'm not sure, but y'all don't find that interesting? Just look at all these different maps with more land masses. Now, is the earth shifting, tilting? Yeah, there's some debate about that, but you know, ice ages and things of that nature could actually show more land masses because the water freezes up and shrinks, so more land masses exposed, and then when the ice melts, less land masses exposed. That could be one explanation, but all of this, and then you see some of the Tartaria in it, and they say Tartaria didn't even exist. Come on now. What do y'all think? Leave in the comments below. Peace and one love.
You're saying the Vanderlei family created this massive city, Haven Underground, to evade the rapidly increasing control of secret societies. And these three men snuck into it, gotten onto a public transport bus, and met an old man who'd not only taken them to a diner to explain the city's origins, but finished the story by informing them that he now had to unalive them, as all the folks in the diner simultaneously closed in on them.
Exactly what I'm telling you.
But if they didn't make it out, then who the hell told you the story?
You think Peter trekked into the depths of a Manhattan subway station, uncovered a miles-long tunnel behind a brick wall, and entered a forbidden city unarmed? Look, as folks in the diner closed in on them, it became an all-out brawl. The three of them were fighting for their lives against this mob of people. But it wasn't looking good. Peter, realizing he has no other option, pulls out his hand cannon, and after letting off a few rounds, the people fled in utter shock, like they'd never seen something like that before. I suppose in their peaceful little world they didn't need them. Unfortunately, by this point, Peter's two friends, Joey and Mark, were unresponsive. And so he runs like hell out of the diner, stops the nearest moving car, and hijacks it, drives back to the other side of the city, where they'd broke in, climbs back up into the tunnel, gets home, and calls me immediately.
You know Peter personally?
That's my day one. So he tells me everything that had happened. Tells me I need to meet him at the Bedford Park station immediately, that there's this tunnel he uncovered. You know, I'm thinking he's crazy. Once I meet him there, he's manic. Looks like he'd been to hell and back, right? He's leading me down the tracks for miles. And as we finally approached the spot where he'd said it was covered. Nothing but a brick wall. I watched him have a mental breakdown right in front of me.
So wait, you can't even confirm that?
Just listen. I know I told him he was crazy. That he was losing his mind doing all these overnight shifts. That Joey and Mark were probably just on vacation or something.
And what happened?
A couple days later, Peter went missing. I haven't seen him since.
So...
Do you know Agartha? No. It's supposed to be what it's called on the inside of the earth. There was this, like a high-ranking officer in the military when they started doing, what is the word? When they're trying to, like, research the area or whatever the case may be. So they traveled inside, near the North Pole. They went inside. There was an entrance, and they flew inside there. And then they said that the guy, his plane, like, got taken over, and he wasn't flying it anymore. And he saw, like, flying saucers and stuff. And they brought him to the leader of the capital of Agartha. It was called Shambhala. I'm dead serious. This is real on YouTube.
Is this a movie, bro? Like,
listen,
what is this?
He goes in and they, the leader basically tells him, like, if you guys drop another, we're gonna come to the surface of the earth and, like, we're gonna handle it. And he said he, like, went back and, like, told the people what they said to him and everything that had happened. He said there was people there that were, like, 8 feet tall, and, like, it was very, like, green and, like, a lot of vegetation, and
in the inside of the earth?
In the inside of the earth. And then he told, like, American government, like, what happened and stuff, and they said he was crazy, and they put him in crazy home. And then, like, years later, when he was an old man, his nephew or someone released his journal, and he, like, wrote these stories in this journal.
They're a human observer, or human observers in this case, to find out what was going on. When I saw Green Beret and Black Beret people encamped inside of our geologist camp, I knew something was up, the gig was up. In this process, I was lowered down the basket of one of these holes, and about from me to this elderly woman here in the front was sitting a 7-foot tall alien gray. The stench was worse than the worst garbage can you can imagine. I didn't waste any time or reach for my pistol. At that time, as an engineer, I didn't have time to carry all the folderol of one of these big submachine guns that all the sea spray and the yellow fruit and the outer perimeter and inner perimeter security people carried. I carried a little Walther PPK pistol with a 9-shot clip. Plus, you're in a almost like a spacesuit environment, and you're reaching for a gun. It's not the easiest thing to do, and then to pop a clip in it and start shooting. And I killed 2 of them. Yes, they're mortal and they do die. However, in the process, one of them did this. All I remember is that he just kind of waved his hand in front of his chest, and the next thing I know, this blue beam hit me and just literally opened me up like a fish. it was some form of electrical force, because the kind of like being hit by a lightning bolt burned all my toenails off of me. And there was a Green Beret that was right behind me, but he risked his life. He shoved me back in the bass and hit the button and took me up. And I wouldn't be alive talking to you today if it wasn't for him. I'm forever indebted. He lost his life. 66 Secret Service agents, Green Berets, Black Berets, crack troops lost their lives because the government, our United States government, lied, did not tell us anything about the alien threat. There's a war underneath there, and I'm talking dead serious down there, a human observer or human observer.
Did you see his hands? It was like he... Look at his hands. What could have did that? That looks like a clean beam. Am I tripping? What's this dude's name? Phil. What the heck?
Bill Schneider was showing samples of what he claimed were unknown exotic metals. He provided maps of the underground dumbs and showed off dramatic scars that he claimed were from a violent skirmish with a non-human species deep underground. In January of 1996, Schneider was found dead days after he mysteriously died of strangulation. Investigations were never completed, and it was ruled a suicide. His evidence went missing. Before he died, Phil Schneider used his clearance to take investigative author Alex Christopher into the top underground levels of the Denver airport, where they took pictures of a long road heading off to multiple destinations. Built upon 53 square miles of land, 25 miles from downtown, the Denver airport was billions of dollars over budget. Different contractors were hired for each section, some of whom have come forward and claimed it would take days to show you what's down there. Inside the otherwise unimpressive airport, there is a capstone with cryptic Illuminati and Masonic imagery, marking a time capsule buried beneath, to be opened in 2094. The airport opened with a famous 4-piece mural depicting biological warfare, the surrender of all national sovereignty, and the emergence of a new religion. On the floor, for no apparent reason, is what appears to be the symbol for gold and silver in a mining cart, AUAG, which is also the abbreviation for a deadly strain of hepatitis discovered in 1965. Outside on the surface, the runways form the shape of a swastika, and passengers are greeted by what has become known as Lucifer, a 32-foot horse with glowing red eyes that reportedly creator when a piece of the sculpture came loose and severed an artery in his leg. This is why many people are talking about Denver's bug out bag program, which is good, because now that we know who the people committing these historic crimes against humanity are, we can't just let them slip away into some hole somewhere. Bill Schneider was showing samples of what he claimed were unknown exotic metals. He provided maps.
I have a picture of one of the aliens been working for the United States Pentagon for the last 58 years. His name is Valiant Thor. He's right here. There's my father in the background. This whole place, the ready room of the USS Eldridge, Al Bielek has probably explained, or maybe even shown you this picture. There's a list of some of the notable people in it. They're all the atomic bomb scientists of the day, all the time variant experimentalists of the day, all the top physicists of that particular day. This was in August of 1943. Now this guy has not changed one iota in 58 years. Started work, he came here, crashed here or whatever, whether he's under duress or not. He started work for our U.S. Navy and military operations in 1937, either 37 or 38 is what I've been told. So it's for 58 years, this man's been employed, probably under duress. If you don't do as we say, we're just going to use you for alien bait or something. I don't know. But anyway, he basically hasn't changed. He lives for 490 years, is what he says his lifespan is. Now, he's supposedly a semi-benevolent, he's a human-looking type person. He has 6 fingers and 6 toes, and he's got one oversized heart, one lung, giant lung. His blood vessels are bigger. He's got copper oxide for blood, similar to an octopus. His brain capacity, 300 centimeters greater than ours. He has a thinking capacity, IQ, if you were to measure, it'd be totally off the scale, it'd be about a 1200 IQ. He speaks 100 languages fluently, alien as well as others. He's a remarkable person. I had a chance to meet him one time.
Tall alien. The stench was worse than the worst garbage can. The entity was absolutely horrible, he said. Snyder fumbled for a pistol he was carrying. He killed 2 of the beings, but not before one of them could emit a strange and harmful energy. The alien made a sort of circular motion with his hand, waving it in front of his chest. Snyder imitated the action. The next thing I know, the blue beam hit me, and it just literally opened me up like a fish. He showed the audience his hand. The beam had burned off some of his fingers on his left hand and hit his chest. It also burned his shoes off and even burned his toenails off. A Green Beret saved Snyder's life, but lost his own in the process. But he managed to get Snyder into a lift and push the button to raise him above ground to safety. The scuffle then turned into a full-blown battle that killed 60 Green Berets and government contractors. The Green Tall alien. The stench
down there, a human observer, or human observers in this case, to find out what was going on. When I saw Green Beret and Black Beret people encamped inside of our geologist camp, I knew something was up. The gig was up. In this process, I was lowered down the basket of one of these holes, and about from me to this elderly woman here in the front was sitting a 7-foot-tall alien gray. The stench was worse than the worst garbage can.
Green Berets reacted.
The underground trains, just like in Chicago.
Think that this guy right above me is a human? Well, think again. The dude's name is Valiant Thor, and apparently he came to planet Earth and spoke to President Eisenhower to discuss humanity's progress. At 8 a.m. on March 16, 1957, a giant saucer lands in a crop field about 20 minutes away from the White House. 2 local policemen arrive at the scene, and as they investigate the mysterious aircraft, they see the door on the saucer open, and they draw their weapons. Now what comes out of the saucer ain't your typical 3-foot-tall alien gray. It's a man that appears to be in his late 20s, 6 foot tall, and an average build, brown hair, brown eyes. The only thing that stood out to the police was his outfit. He was wearing like a golden jumpsuit that didn't have any seams or pockets. He tells the cops that he means no harm and that he wishes to speak with President Eisenhower. Now the craziest part about this is that he communicates with the officers telepathically. The police don't even question his very particular request and take him straight to the Pentagon. He gets to the Pentagon and then they escort him down to a secret underground train station that connects the Pentagon to the White House. Valiant Thor gets to the White House and introduces himself to the president. Val tells the president he has traveled from, quote, the planet your Bible calls the morning star. Eisenhower's like, alright, that's straight. I'm familiar with Venus, which is the planet that he's referring to. Val then tells the president that he has been sent to Earth by a group called the High Council, which seems to be some kind of benevolent committee of intergalactic beings. Basically a bunch of aliens looking out for less intelligent beings like us. He tells the president that it's his mission to convince military leaders to deactivate their nuclear capabilities because it's not only a concern to the people of Earth, but it's a concern to people out in outer space. This gives credence to all the high-ranking government officials from all over the world that claim that there is a galactic federation out there.
The Secrets of Dulce Base. and what they are hiding under the New Mexico desert. In 1979, Dulce Base was side to a horrific war between humans and aliens. But there are darker things occurring there. This is security guard Thomas Costello. While working at the base, Costello took this photo of human-alien hybrids and leaked it. They are breeding slave warriors for the upcoming war with the alien races, Costello said. Costello and his family are now missing and presumed dead. He suffered the same fate as Phil Schneider, an engineer at the base who was present during the Dulce Base War of 1979 and died of mysterious circumstances. Are they really here?
Allegedly, what happened in '79, there was some sort of information exchange going on where there were actual live aliens at the facility. And at one particular point, there was an area where some security personnel went to enter. And apparently, because of not the sidearms, but the bullets in the sidearms, from what I understand, if they would have entered the area, the bullets would have detonated. Supposedly, one of the creatures tried to stop the security personnel from entering the area, and a fight ensued. And the bottom line from the altercation was that the security personnel, I don't remember how many were involved, but were all killed, and they died of head wounds, and that's all that I heard of that story. Allegedly, what happened in '79, there was
We found out another video. I was just searching through TikTok and Mind Unveiled popped up. So we're going to cover them. This is by Mind Unveiled on YouTube. Highly recommend them and My Lunch Break. They dive through these ancient secrets like it's no other. So buckle up, get you some popcorn, because we're diving into the underground world of Chicago.
In the modern day, we're taught that Chicago was built in the 1800s, but there's so much with that narrative that doesn't add up that it leads us to believe that there's something that was left out of the official history books. In 1605, a map published in Venice shows North America with many old world cities. Notice that the symbol to represent these cities is some type of red castle. Supposedly at the time that this was written, there was no English-speaking settlements on the North American continent. In the middle of the continent, past the end of the St. Lawrence River, appears the name Shalaga. And we can see this in a variety of different maps. It's right in the exact same place that Chicago would appear, and obviously, the name is extremely close. In 1894, the Chicago Tribune actually mentioned Shalaga being on a map from 1615. Chicago or Shalaga on an old map. Quote, President Harper of the University of Chicago has lately received a quaint map of the world. This map was presented to President Harper by Dr. Charles Richter, the Imperial German Representative Commissioner to the World's Fair. Now isn't that interesting? It continues, The following letter of presentation accompanies the map. Quote, W.R. Harper, President of the University of Chicago. Dear Sir, when during the early preparatory stages of the exposition work efforts were made mainly upon the investigation of Mr. Curtis to collect maps, supposition be correct, it is most likely on this map the name of Chicago in its original form appears for the first time. Quote, Herr Professor Graf of Dresden, who has taken a prominent interest in the researches to which the Chicago Exposition and the historic events underlying its existence have given so powerful an impulse, has upon our request arranged for a photographic reproduction of the maps in question. And as the representative of this commission and on behalf of Herr Professor Graf, I have the honor to request you to accept a copy of the same with the request that you give it an appropriate place in your university. And with the hope, also, that it will prove the warm interest that Germany has taken of old in that far-off period of history. I trust that you will accept this small token of esteem in the spirit in which it is given as a mark of appreciation, however inadequate, of the energetic efforts that are being made towards the propagation of science and education by the Chicago institutions generally, and your university especially, and as a manifestation of the interest which German scientists have taken." End quote. Okay, so Dr. Charles Richter was the Imperial German Representative Commissioner to the World's Fair, and it seems that he was trying to write to the university professor and attempt to speak about Shalaga appearing on old maps, and he even alludes to it having a connection with Germany. Obviously, there was some interest by people who knew not of the origins of the World Fairs into Chicago's ancient origins. But this is kind of where it gets even crazier. The newspaper actually had a follow-up 6 days later where they attempt to cover this whole thing up. Let's remember now that we understand the orphan asylums and that most of these people, especially the journalists and the German migrants, they wouldn't know the full history of this city. That knowledge would only be known by the secret orders who own the buildings and perhaps some higher-ups at these colleges. Now the headline of the newspaper reads, "Shalaga is not the same as Chicago." Someone named C.F. Gunther writes in and says, quote, "In the Tribune of Sunday, there appeared a map lately sent to President Harper of the University by Dr. Charles Richter, Imperial German Representative Commissioner, which is supposed to represent the oldest appearance of the name of Chicago, namely 1615. As no one questions this assumption, I am frank to say that it is unquestionably an error in every respect. It is not true that the so-called Shalaga on this map is at the exact point where the marvelous city is now located, but on the contrary, the country is marked Mexicana. Again, the so-called St. Lawrence River is not so far south. This river was well known at the time and should be at the top of the map. Hence, this is also a far-fetched assumption. It is self-evident that no one would put Chicago on a river running up in Mexico, for Chicago, situated on a chain of lakes nearly 1,000 miles long, omitting these lakes entirely and place it on a river going into Mexico. He continues trying to prove this Mexico argument and that Shalaga is actually spelled Shalapa. Now, this makes it very obvious that they didn't want this to be looked into at all, because the truth is, Shalaga is not spelled Shalapa, and it's on several maps in the 1500s. Many of the maps that show Shalaga closer south have been distorted, as with the German plate, but there are maps that show it in its correct position. Also, just because the map said Mexicana doesn't mean anything. In fact, Mexicana is said to have been all of California, Florida, Nova France, Norumbega, Quivira, and many more. It wasn't literally just in Mexico. And it's very strange that someone at the university actually said this and ignored that Shalaga is actually accurately placed on Mercator's map, so there's obviously some type of cover-up going on. Also, another argument made is that Hochelaga appears on several maps, and that Shalaga is some corruption of that, but I think Hochelaga must have been some type of smaller settlement made around the ruins of Shalaga, possibly by cannibalistic tribes as mentioned in many books around this time. But this got me looking into the University of Chicago, and just take a look at this building, which was also graciously funded by John D. Rockefeller. So yeah, it's another castle, but just think about it. Why would the college try to cover up Shalaga? Well, it's because the officials, or those who were in control of Chicago at the time, were secret society orphans who had repopulated the city and educated the population. By this time in 1890, most of Chicago's population was transported in, and the people had no clue who actually built these structures. Just look at the University of Chicago's emblem in 1890. Looks like we have a griffin in flames. Maybe they're trying to tell us something? They tell us that Chicago was raised afoot because of swampland flooding. They tell us that they built a tunnel under the Chicago River. They tell us that there was a great fire, yet when we look at the old pictures of Chicago, it looks like a bomb went off. They tell us that Chicago's World Fair was built in less than 3 years. Even if this was done with plaster, this would have been a massive undertaking. Just look at these structures. Does this look temporary to you? The purpose of these fairs were to indoctrinate, and I wouldn't be surprised if people began asking questions. I mean, look at Dr. Charles.
If you ask me, those world fairs were already there, and they just tore them down as an excuse, like, oh, we're going to be doing another one soon. That's what I feel like. That's my honest opinion. Let me know your guys' thoughts below.
Obviously was curious to Chicago's ancient origins, since it has been depicted in maps, and they were probably curious about who built all these structures, and so maybe the officials decided that they had to get rid of it, so they destroyed everything. These structures were not built in the 1800s. Chicago was an old world Tartarian city. It's even on Mercator's map from 1569, so why when you look up Shilaga does it say that it's only on a map in 1605? Very strange, right? And on the Mercator's map there's a series of texts with Latin legends that actually talk about Tartaria. He mentions the Tartars almost 20 times on this map, and it's possible that they're the actual source for where Mercator actually got his info. He talks about a King John who had taken over the country of Tartaria, and basically in order to quell rebellion, he desired to disperse them into different countries, breaking their power of rebellion. But the Tartars were unwilling to give up their kinship, and of mutual association, they made a vow and fled to the northward where they seized a very vast country. So Mercator was well aware of the Tartarians, and if they had complete control of the east, it's not that far of a stretch to assume that they would attempt to pass the Bering Strait. If we look at Arzareth, which is the land beyond the Great River, far away from the habitation of man, in which the 10 tribes of Israel will dwell, observing the laws of Moses until the time of restoration, Arzareth was clearly in Tartaria, right by the Bering Strait. The Tartarians, then trying to flee whatever king or parasites were trying to take over, they crossed into America and began creating cities, one of them being Shilaga. In America, being the latest and most accurate description of the New World, we actually have a paragraph that speaks of this exact situation. Quote, "The other Tartary, which certainly was the first nursery, from hence the Americans were transplanted. Tartary, or Tartary, so called from the river Tatar, which runs through the country Mongol into the Northern Ocean, covers a great part of the terrestrial globe. The lesser Tartary makes out a considerable part of Europe, the greater is Asia." Now we must inquire from what Tartars the Americans extracted. Mornius, Postellus, Jean-Bardus, Proterus, and others are of the opinion that the Tartars, which about the year 1228, under the command of Genghis Khan, overspread the earth like a deluge, where the successors to the 10 tribes of Israel, which were carried into captivity to Assyria by Salmanazar, the Tartary, or rather Tartaria, seems to be some testimony thereof, because it signifies in the Syrian or Hebrew tongue remnants or remainders, as seemingly because these Tartarians were remainders of the forementioned tribes. End quote.
Damn. They just broke it down about Genghis Khan and the tribes of Israel. Oh my God. That's interesting.
So you tell me, what do you think? Is Chicago the ancient mythical city of Shilaga? If we connect this with the Chicago World Fair, then it actually starts to make a lot more sense. Do you guys have any finds to share on Shilaga? Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Stay curious, and all we can hope is that our minds will be unveiled.
Shout out to Mind Unveiled for that powerful video. Really got to think about it, man. All those old structures at the think about the Field Museum and all those other museums, all those other old structures in Chicago. That is ancient world you're looking at. Hundreds of years, might even 1,000 years, you know, that they've been there. How interesting is that? Let me listen to this again slowly. Break down what he said about Genghis Khan. You know, it brings you a whole new meaning when you hear Tartarians. What in Tar Nation? What in Tartaria, bucko? But let me try to break. He went through there about Genghis Khan's, the tribe of Israel. If you guys have any more information on the tribes of Israel, Genghis Khan, please. But let me see what I can piece together what he said, man. I'm not the brightest, person. My IQ ain't the highest, but real recognizes real, Real eyes realize real lies. I'm gonna say that one more time. Real eyes realize real lies.
Take over, they crossed into America and began creating cities, one of them being Shalaga. In America, being the latest and most accurate description of the New World, we actually have a paragraph that speaks of this exact situation. Quote, "The other Tartary, which certainly was the first nursery, from hence the Americans were transplanted. Tartary, or Tartary, so called from the river Tatar, which runs through the country Mongol into the Northern Ocean, covers a great part of the terrestrial globe. The lesser Tartary makes out a considerable part of Europe. The greater is Asia."
So if we find an old Tartary map, I believe Tartary was a giant part of Russia, and they called Europe the lesser Tartary. For Europe, I believe, like France and Paris. I don't know. That's just what I got from him saying that.
Now we must inquire from what Tartars the Americans extracted. Mornius, Postellus, Jean-Bardus, Poteris, and others are of the opinion that the Tartars, which about the year 1228, under the command of Genghis Khan, overspread the earth like a deluge.
Under the command of Genghis Khan, that the Tartaries, which about the year 1228, under the command of Genghis Khan. So Genghis Khan, he was the leader of the Tartary? Let me get that straight. That the Tartaries, like the Tartars, which above the year 1228, under the command of Genghis Khan. That literally just said Genghis Khan, that dude off Mulan with the owl taking over everything. It says he was in charge of Genghis Khan. He was in charge of Tartary. We might have to dive into Genghis Khan because they're not. They even spelled his name different. I remember it was like Genghis Khan or something. I don't know. But we're going to dive into Genghis Khan.
Where the successors to the 10 tribes of Israel, which were carried into captivity to Assyria by Salmanazar, the Tartary, or rather Tartaria, seems to be some testimony thereof, because it signifies in the Syrian or Hebrew tongue remnants or remainders, as seemingly because these Tartarians were remainders of the forementioned tribes.
So they're literally saying the Tartarians were the remainders of the descendant tribes of Israel. And Genghis Khan was the leader? Oh, man. Is that... Drop in the comments below your thoughts. We got to come together on a collective and figure out what's going on. They lied to us. All right. Let me move out the way so y'all can read that. It says, which we carried into captivity to Aphilia by Samnazar. We're going to type in his name too. Why not? Salamanzar. Salamanzar, the name Tartary, or rather Tartaria. I don't know if that seems to be some, I don't know why that's spelled with an F. Seems to be some testimony thereof because of its Syrian or Hebrew tongue, remnants or remainders. Because their Tartaries were remainders of the aforementioned tribes.
End quote. So you tell me, what do you think? Is Chicago the ancient mythical city?
Yes, it is. All right, let's try it. Activate submersible. Shout out to Mind Unveiled for that video. They did that over 2 years ago. I'm just now trying to put the pieces together. I've been asleep My people are destroyed from a lack of knowledge. Hosea 4:6. All right. We need to type in. First, let's see what Google tries to tell us. Or Wikipedia about Genghis Khan. I'm going to show y'all what I'm typing in. Genghis Khan. That's definitely not it. They definitely don't want us talking about that. What if we put Genghis? Genghis Khan. That's who they try to tell us. But his name was Genghis Khan. Caam. So this is a lie. Where's my phone? Who is Genghis Khan? They're saying Genghis Khan. They're switching it on me. They won't let me say the other name. Who is Genghis Khan? Was the founder of the first Khan of Mongolia Empire after spending most of his life uniting the Mongol tribes. All right, let's see if we can find some truth.
This is Genghis here, Temujin. Right? He's the founder. And all the original pictures of him is dark black. So here we see the relationship between Persia, the Moors, and Tartary. And soon, with a few Moors who were detained in China, having 30 years entered before and was permitted their religion, of which they could lay almost nothing but Muhammad, who was a Moor, and their father were Moors, and I am a Moor, with some other words from their Al-Quran, wherewith the abstinence from swine's flesh they have faith until they take them all. So this Cathay kingdom is what we erroneously today call Tartary. And out of Tartary came China. So when they talk about Temujin, who is Genghis, and then before him Tamerlane, or who, you know what I'm saying, or whoever who started these crusades out there to take land, this was the eastern side of the people who was helping us put down the Roman Empire. So we was banging on them in the west, they was banging on them in the east. And by the time they were done, that was it. Lord. Moors was in the league with the kings of Cathay. These kings of Cathay are the original so-called Mongols. Or the original so-called Mongols. You understand? And these Mongols of Cathay were the ones who basically created what we call China. And these Chinese or these people consolidated then, and then we get Tartary. And then out of Tartary, we get all of the so-called Balkan and Russian states that came from there. And when the Russian state came, they did away and absorbed Tartary the same way the United States and the rest of these other kingdoms absorbed Barbary. This is Genghis here, Temujin. Right? He's the founder. And all of the original pictures
Drop in the comments your thoughts below. I don't know what to say. I need more information. That's not adding up to the 12 tribes of Israel, but I'm trying to put it together. The original Buddha, what's going on?
So these giants that made war with the Tartary kingdoms were commanded by the Zeta Greys to occupy and take over the lands. These monsters on the movie called The Great Wall are symbolizing the Setica giants, understanding that there were different creatures that were attacking the wall, but most of them were giants that were coming and making war with the indigenous people of Tartary. The Asiatic phenotype actually comes from the giants of the Setica. Everyone who was sent to the wall of Tartaria was almost guaranteed to die because the wars were so brutal and consistent that they weren't going to make it out the week because there was always a consistent battle with these giants. We all know that Genghis Khan led the Mongolian horde to actually conquer the Great Wall of Tartary and eventually overtaking all the kingdoms and establishing his people as the new governors and chiefs of the land. Being that these giants were actually clones created by the Zeta Greys, they had no limit to how many soldiers they could send out, 3D printing these clones, these giant clones out to continuously battle against the wall of Tartary. Eventually, the Zeta Greys lended a helping hand, winning the war. So these giants that made war with the Tartary king.
Fascinating. We do know about the Great Wall of Tartary. Just in case you don't know about the Great Wall of Tartary, let me dive in. Shout out to Bully Slayer. Shout out to Bully Slayer, One File Vow. If anybody has any information on where this young man is, please let me know. We haven't heard anything from him in damn near, 2 years? You know? It's a little disturbing, I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, we've got your ass. We've got your ass now. The Great Wall of China? You mean the Great Wall of Tartaria? Let's take a look at a few old maps. You can see Grand Tartary in the green and China in the red. Let's take a closer look. As you can see, the wall is circled around China. And again, another Tartarian map, you can see the wall is circled around China. And if you notice, the steep side of the wall is facing China, making it hard for any invaders to climb up. And if you look closely, you will see that the lookout posts are facing China, making it easy to pick off your enemies with crossbows, one by one. So no, China didn't build that wall, the Tartarians did. Oh my days. Oh.
The Great Wall of China, one of the biggest wonders of the world, no? They say this side is where they throw the arrows to the enemies, and that's why they built this giant wall to protect China from their enemies. But you know what's interesting and very curious? This side is outside China. This side is China, and this side is outside China. Meaning, this wall, the history is a lie. This wall was not built to protect China from these enemies. It's the enemies which are in this side are protecting themselves from China. So, the Chinese did not build this wall. Who built this wall? I'll tell you, research the Tartarian Empire, yeah, which was in all this area, and they were defending themselves from the Chinese, not the other way around. History is a lie, geography is a lie, science is a lie. They lied to us.
So if we go back to that other video where they were talking about the Chinese was basically, I don't know, created by the Greys or something. They had like some type of offspring from these Greys. That's what he said, for entertainment purposes only. I'm just trying to see. So that's who they're fighting off? I don't know. This is This is beyond fascinating. Just trying to put the pieces together for it. It's just.
So these giants that made war with the Tartary kingdoms were commanded by the Zeta Greys to occupy
The Zedek Greys. So, I don't know.
Oh, we've got your ass.
What language is this? It's just a mysterious feeling whenever I look at like these goat heads, this chimera looking. It's just such a mysterious, interesting feeling. You know, I can't describe it. I cannot describe it, but it is fascinating. It is interesting. It's like I want to know more.
Family, how was it possible that a great empire like this one, the Egyptians, the biggest empire, Tartaria, fell? They tried to hide a lot from us, but now we are finally discovering the truth. Let's talk about the navigator who crossed the ice walls, because he discovered the truth. How the custodians, just like portrayed in the movie Prometheus, and the Anunnakis has caused the downfall of the great Tartaria. And look family, they call it a human reset, the reboot. And family, look how they do it, just like how the Bible explains. By pets, floods, fires, plagues, wars, missiles, or war bombs that they call asteroids. And over here he's talking about the plan to free the human being from the custodial yoke. If you wonder who is planning to free the human beings, it's the ancestral republic and the ancient land of Anna.
The Tartaria theory suggests that an ancient and advanced civilization called Tartaria was deliberately erased from history According to this theory, Tartaria built sophisticated cities and was overshadowed by Western powers. However, most historians reject this theory due to a lack of concrete evidence and its primarily internet-based origins.
Supporters continue to debate that the Tartaria theory remains controversial.
The Tartaria theory suggests that an ancient.
You guys see this? I believe this is in Russia, this building, and there's no telling how big this is, man. Like, if you can fuse hollow Earth with the geocentric Earth, I'm telling y'all that might be it. That's where I'm leaning. We live on a geocentric world, and it's hollow inside. You keep going down further, you get to Sheol, where you can hear the fountains of the deep getting broke up. You know, like in the book of Isaiah. O thou Lucifer, has thou fallen below all those ancient kings and stuff? He was down there with the, what was it called? The wormwood, the maggots. You could hear the vents shifting up. Let me find it. Lucifer fell into hell with kings. I believe it was in Isaiah. Book of Isaiah. Oh. Let's try to type it in. Book of Isaiah. Oh. Fell into hell with kings. There it is. Isaiah 14:12 KJV. I like KJV. That's just my Let's start at 12. It says, How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thy heart, I will ascend into the heavens. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit upon the mount of congregation in the sides of the north. What does that sound like? I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou hast been brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. They that seen shall narrowly look upon thee, and consider thee, saying, Is this the man that made the earth tremble, that did shake the kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness, and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the houses of his prisoners? All the kings of the nations, even all around them, lie in glory, every one of them in his own house. But thou art cast out of thy grave like an abominable branch, and has the raiment of those that are slain. Thus thrust through with a sword that goes down into the stones of the pit, as a carcase trodden under feet. As a carcass trodden under thy feet. Thou shalt not join them within burial, because thou hast destroyed thy land, and slain thy people, and seed of evildoers shall never be renowned. Prepare slaughter for his of iniquity and their fathers, that they do not rise, nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world of the cities with cities. For I will rise up against them, says the Lord of hosts, and cut off from Babylon's name and remnant and son and nephew, says the Lord. It was right before is the one I was looking for. All they shall speak unto thee are, this is Isaiah 14:10. All they shall speak and say unto thee, Art thou have become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? So I'm envisioning, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm envisioning, he's in hell right now, and he got the walkers coming up to him, talking to him like, is this, you supposed to be all that? Now you brought down to our size? That's how I see it. And the reason I'm saying is that all this, it says, Thy pomp is brought down to thy grave, and they knows thy vials. noise of thy vials. 11. This literally means the fountains of the deep. If you look at all if you look at all the so-called meteorite craters all across the world, I believe that they're geysers. And those geysers are dried up right now. But if you were to follow them all the way down, you will go into what they're talking about right here, the noise of thy vials. That's like literally the beginning of the fountains of the deep. That's how low Lucifer is right now. So when we go to this right here, you know, it's no telling how deep this goes. And so it's you got to look at it now from a geocentric standpoint, but it's hollow. That's where I'm at now, y'all. These waters, that's where I'm at. Drop in the comments y'all thoughts. I did my best, y'all.
I wonder what type of worms, you know, those aren't earthworms, I believe. Those probably a different species, probably. Who knows what's inside hollow? Huge shout out to my lunch break for this video. We are in the depths of hollow earth, creatures beaming, all types of crazy stuff going on. So I feel like what a time to dive into this one. The perfect time would be right now. So you better lock in and buckle up. Huge shout out to my lunch break for this video.
Survival without sunlight would likely be limited to a matter of weeks or months. So people, humans, are not going to be able to set up camp for months underground. We simply cannot survive underground for months or years. Unless, of course, there was a power source, a light source, electricity. Which brings up a brand new question. Whoever was in these tunnels, 18 levels deep, do we all understand how dark it would be down there? Unless they had torches, where again, ChatGPT and AI will tell you that it would be extremely unlikely for a fire torch to stay on in a tunnel system that is 18 floors deep due to the lack of oxygen, ventilation, and fuel source, where it states, even if a fire were to start in a tunnel system, the amount of fuel may be limited. It would need a continuous source of fuel. Now, this is not realistic at all in the narrative that we are all told, especially since we are told that Edwin Drake drilled the first crude oil well in 1859. So, electricity, a light bulb, is the only option, 18 levels below the ground. So going straight back to episode 10 and 38, are we 100% sure that electricity has never been here before? A light bulb. Who was living 18 levels deep in the dark? The answer is clear, that it would not be physically possible for a human to do this in the dark. And we know that a human could not survive or even construct something 18 levels down in the dark. I don't think this is looking so easy after all. And then survive there for months in the dark, proving one of two things. The first being that it was humans who constructed the tunnel systems, and they had technology, such as a light source, technology that we have been given back today. And we've discussed this so many times. But here we have physical evidence that a light source would be necessary. What we are doing right now is taking the mainstream narrative and shredding it right in half forever. They had to have had a light source 18 levels down. Nobody was constructing tunnels in the dark. And we know this. So the light bulb being invented in 1879, I believe, is 100% a lie. And we fully know this now. Now, I definitely believe it was humans. And I believe there was technology. They had a light source, and so much more. And this technology is being given back to us today. But let's just pretend, since we're investigating, that there wasn't a light source, like the mainstream history is telling us. We'll just go off of their story. for a second. Building tunnel systems for thousands of miles in the dark, 18 levels deep with a shovel, 200 cities, all interconnected, tunnel systems, connected all over the world, thousands of miles for living spaces, a situation that a human would not thrive in at all, where it is possible that these tunnels and underground structures were created and constructed for survival, and many did not make it, which then in turn created the catacombs. Again, I will never hold back any thought or information, so let's take this a step further. Is there a species out there that we are unaware of today? A species that we are not being told about, hidden from us, blocking us off from the proof within these tunnel systems? A species that is living or have lived right under our feet, a species that would have thrived underground. At this point, we have found so much evidence simply because we have asked questions. And I think it's important to at least ask the question so that we're all aware of it in case we come across more evidence that supports it in the future. There are facts in play here. We know that we could not survive months underground in the dark. So we have to ask, who can? And who could build underground structures 18 levels deep, 200 cities under our feet, exactly like we have shown today, in the dark? Well, it could for sure have been humans, and I'm leaning towards that. But, like I said, it's important to ask questions. Could there have been or still be a species that is off limits to the public, a species that thrive underground, where we are told that the earth was destroyed first by fire and then by ice, and one earth world, the old world, passed into the other, our civilization today? It is told in the Native American stories that ant people took groups of virtuous humans into their underground homes and protected and taught them until the earth was safe for humans again.
This is quite a famous phenomenon. There are huge cities. They look like ant farms. They look like ant farms on an enormous scale that are dug out under the earth.
Where this took place in Colorado, meaning that there must be massive tunnel systems there as well. So I will be investigating that. Now, this is of course a legend, and I'm not saying it is proof at all, but it is very interesting and something to keep in mind that ant people are being discussed on the other side of the map, with massive tunnel systems all over the world, like we know. Who builds tunnels? Well, ants do. The last time I checked, humans are not known for their tunnel skills and living underground in the dark. But yet, we find tunnel systems everywhere, all interconnected strategically, where this is not just in Colorado. It is interesting to note that the Babylonian sky god was named Anu, where the Hopi word for ant is also Anu. And the Hopi root word for Naki means friends, suggesting that the Hopi, Anunnaki, or ant friends might have been the same group as the Sumerian Anunnaki.
Could Anunnaki mean ant friends? It's a possibility, but it wouldn't really explain all the different underground railroads and different technologies going on underground. But it is an interesting and disturbing theory nonetheless.
The Great Wall of Tartaria. It may not actually be China. You guys asked me to look into it. I did, and I ain't gonna lie, y'all, I'm interested. Why have I just never even heard the name? You know what I mean? And then I start to look. They have maps with the shit on there. And so I'm like, wait a second, whoa. Why have we just, that's a big area. Why has this never been brought up? And, you know, it could just be capped. I'm like, all right, random map. But then I saw this. You don't just make globes and put names on there for no reason. So at some point in time, this was a thing. Now, why was it erased from history? That's the question that we have to have. And that's because whoever wins, they write the history. That's just a thing that we have to accept as a fact. So it's not always going to be true. That's why history sometimes changes, because we uncover shit and we're like, wait a second, that's actually not true. Why was y'all capping about that? And I'm starting to think Tartaria, there's some shit that we need to know about this that was not told to us. And it's not just one map. There's multiple maps with this shit on there. And it's interesting because it stops in like 1550, around there. All of a sudden, they're just never mentioned again. And I mean ever. Like, nobody talks about them. They're not written in the history books. And it's like it didn't even exist. But it obviously existed because look at this shit. And I guess their architecture was also way ahead of its time. But for whatever reason, poof, gone. Like magic. And never heard of again until recently. Now, you could say it's conspiracy theorists, but why would they have maps with this name on there if it wasn't real? Which brings me back to our Great Wall here. Now, I think China definitely has some stuff to do with it, but now, is this Tartarian? Were they the ones they were trying to keep out, or were they building this to keep China in there like, hey, man, I don't want you a part of our shit. No immigrants over here. We running something. And just a weird, incredible fact is there's a body that's buried around every 3 feet, and we remember 13,000 miles. So that's a lot of bodies and slaves that were done to make this wall over 2,000 years. So whether it's China, Tartarian, I respect the wall. 13,000.
You've heard of this, right? It's the Great Wall of China. But what if I told you that the Chinese didn't actually build it? So who built it then? Well, what if I told you that the Great Wall of China was actually the Great Wall of Tartaria from the Moorish Empire? You know, the ones that they don't really want you to know about? I know. Crazy, right? Well, maybe you can answer me this then. The Chinese built the Great Wall of China, then why are the steep sides facing towards them? Seems odd. Also, why are the lookout posts also facing towards them? You would think it would make it easier to defend yourselves if you were facing the enemy, not yourself. Seems a little weird. Or like that way they could see the enemy coming and they could properly defend themselves with bow and arrows or whatever they were using, throwing rocks. It just doesn't really make sense to build everything facing you, not away from you. Oh, and what about the old map? What's that? Tartaria? That's funny. Maybe it's the Great Wall of Tartaria surrounding China to protect themselves from China. And then when the empire got taken out by the mud flood, the Chinese kind of just took credit for it because, you know, as we all know from history, the winners and the victors write the history. Just a thought. If you want some more content on Tartaria, then make sure you like this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and let me know what other topics you want me to cover. See ya. So you've heard.
Just tell the truth. Someone just tell us the truth of the real history instead of the winners. All this, just give us the facts.
Wall of China. This is the steepest part of the Great Wall of.
You ever wonder why the Great Wall of China is so perfectly geometrically shaped? Well, it's not a wall. Check out Game of Thrones intro. Now, this is going to show you quite a bit of different Tartarian technological architecture, which are going to show you that they're engineered machines. Here you can see how pillars may have been crafted. If you engineer it properly, you don't need a lot of manpower. And it almost seems like they're showing you an order of things. So when that gear is activated, then you have this machine, which potentially could be something for harnessing electricity because that's a tree. And trees generate electricity. The taller they are, the more electric they are. There's a lot of things about the ice wall and the Arctic Circle and forbidden area. I personally think there's something about frost, like Frosty the Snowman and Snow White, but that'll be in another video. Notice the silvery stream. Is that mercury? Check out this wall with that coin. Imagine that against the Great Wall of China / Tartaria. Okay, so now that that's activated, it then turns on another thing elsewhere. probably connected. Oh, this one is how they raised pyramids. See that rotating structure in the center? The pyramids were built from the top down because we pulled it upwards from the bottom. That's magnets and mercury creating that spin. Now here we have, what is this? It's some sort of a rotating device. You can see there's a gear. And I know this is a show, but you know, universal law states that they have to tell us somehow to avoid karma.
Fascinating. We was just talking about the Great Wall. Winter's coming, literally.
Great Wall of...
Is they were trying to tell us about the ice wall. Who knew? Drop in the comments y'all thoughts below. Activate submersible. Oxygen levels.
Oxygen levels are at 100% jet.
All right, bet. We're going to dive into the underground system in Chicago. The fact that they don't have any gloves while going under there is wild. That gripping the slimy ladder, you know. Shout out to my lunch break for this next video. If he dove in underground Chicago, we definitely got to take a look at that while we're on the subject.
Name of the chef, but not a word about what they were served. Not a word about what they were served.
Today, we are going into the Chicago Public Library's archives, locating information that will expose the tunnel systems located right under the city of Chicago. We know here on this channel that we are definitely not being told the full story regarding the tunnel systems all over the world, where they start off by telling us that the very first major tunnel project was dug under Lake Michigan to a water intake 2 miles out in 1864 to 1866. This is 29 years before the invention of the power tool. Digging massive tunnel systems under the lake, where it goes on to say that Chicago kept on digging away, creating thousands of miles of underground structures, where in my opinion, this is the beginning of the narrative for these tunnels that were created by the previous civilization. Thousands of miles of underground structures right underneath the city of Chicago, all according to public records in the Chicago Public Library. So let's go deeper. I was able to locate someone that has recently been inside the tunnel systems, and they shared what they saw with me. And now I'm going to share it all with you. We have seen these photos. They are on the internet, and here it is today. We can see that the railway is still there on the floor, looking exactly like we see in these photos that we are told is from pre-1906. Over 120 years ago, I was sent other photos that I think you will all want to see. These tracks lead throughout the entire tunnel system, using them as transportation throughout the entire city. We have shown in episode 42 how these tunnel systems are in every single city in the world, how they connect all of the buildings together underground. These buildings are bigger than we can see.
That kind of makes you think about the slavery days. I believe it was Harriet Tubman about the Underground Railroad. You know, what if the Underground Railroad was literal? This wasn't just them running through forests. What if the Underground Railroad was literally Underground Railroad?
There is so much more under our feet than we realized before, where we can see that this tunnel system leads right to the Chicago City Hall, a building that we were told was constructed in 1911. Of course, holding the fire story, where this is a nod, meaning one of three things, or a combination of them. In my opinion, of course. 1, it's letting them all know which building is from the old world. 2, where the catacombs are located. And or 3, where the tunnel systems are located. I believe it is a nod to these three things at this point. And we need to remember this for the future and keep track of what we continue to see throughout our research. They also tell us that there was a previous city hall. Now, it's very interesting that they tell us that these tunnels were constructed by the Chicago Tunnel Company. Great name. And their history begins by letting us know that there were initial tunnels. Initial tunnels. Are these not the tunnels that were found? You tell me. Especially when they go on to say that the city of Chicago had no idea what to do with these tunnels, granting the newly formed Illinois Telephone and Telegraph Company the rights to construct utility tunnels under the streets of Chicago in 1899. So 1899, they start making tunnels for phone lines. I thought we were told by the Chicago Public Library in their archives that they were digging thousands of miles of tunnels decades before this. That's right. We were told this. And the first telephone in Chicago didn't come until 1877. So what was Chicago doing digging tunnels for thousands of miles before the telephone? Because we know this wasn't the true purpose of these tunnels, and they are trying to push it off that they needed the tunnels for telephone cables in 1899, where we can see very clearly that the dates are beginning to collide, the very beginning of a massive narrative slip-up. So let's keep going. They continue on by saying that the initial plans for the tunnels called for filling them with phone cables, when we just showed that that is not true at all. This was not the initial plans for the tunnels. Not even close. We have found something massive, in my opinion. A massive lie. And here's where they're gonna try and explain why they have railways in all of these tunnels. When the city, of course, said no, you cannot use the manholes to get the cables into the tunnels. Of course they did. They say, yes, we need you to dig tunnels for our phones. But no, you can't use the manholes to actually get the cables down there. I'm gonna ask you, how ridiculous does that sound? Refusing to permit manholes through which cables could be unreeled into the tunnels. The plans were then changed, of course. Changed to include rails for hauling cable spools through the tunnels. Incredible. Where the city was largely unaware of the nature of tunneling. They didn't even know how big these tunnels were or where they went, saying they were unaware. Unbelievable. The clearest proof that we have ever been told on the tunnels, in my opinion. A huge sentence right there for our research. Can you see that these tunnels were constructed by the previous civilization now? Are you able to see the truth that a previous civilization was here, much closer to our timeline than what we have been told? And all of their work has been left behind for us to see, for us to uncover, where the first 16 miles of tunnels had to be excavated to remove earth carefully and systematically from an area in order to find buried remains. And we are just getting started today. Welcome to episode 80 of my lunch break. I hope you're all having a great day. Paraplegic Coffee, the Phoenix Art, Jet Ski Chuck, the Arnolds, structures. Is this limited to just tunnels? Or is this another proof that there are buildings, structures, exactly like they say, right under our feet, underground? Thousands of miles of underground structures. What are we seeing today? I think we have unlocked something massive. I think they are very aware of what is under the ground at this point, and they were rediscovering it in the 18 and 1900s. And we are now following behind them right now. It's all out there. If you're able to read with open eyes, it clearly states that there are thousands of miles of underground structures right under the city of Chicago with maximum use of scarce real estate. Is this not exactly what we want to see? Is it not putting everything together for us? Connecting it all, showing that buildings are underground, real estate underground. Thousands of miles of underground structures right under the city of Chicago. We now know that this is here. It is no longer a question of if the previous civilization's work is underground. It's now a matter of just finding them and exposing them to everybody in the world. We now know that they are there. We have photos of inside the tunnels. We know that they lead to all of the buildings. Thousands of miles of tunnels, underground structures, underground real estate. We know that there are thousands of miles of tunnels. We were told this, yet here in 1910, the system is only showing us 60 miles on the map. So we know that there's a lot of tunnels that are not being shown to us today. And we know that these tunnels connect to these buildings, and I'm gonna show that soon, including the City Hall. It's so interesting to me that they leave this part of the story out every single time. We have never seen in any construction story that they connected the local tunnel to the building. We don't see that the City Hall also has a tunnel system connected to it within the narrative. Yet we know that the City Hall is 100% connected to this massive tunnel system. I have also located first-hand accounts of these tunnels where this individual worked at the Field Museum of Natural History in the late 1970s, where he explains that the building was a customer of the Chicago Tunnel Company, where the tunnel was connected via an elevator. And he explains that after all of the freight cars were abandoned, they were destroyed and scrapped, except for one, which remained in the Field Museum's sub-basement. A basement to the basement is what we are reading. This building is much bigger than we are told, cut off from the rest of the tunnel system.
I love the Field Museum, man. They got a giant T-Rex in there. They got over 3 stories of artifacts. This is wild.
Was a train from the past. The manager of the physical plant, Norman, took this individual down there, and he says it seemed at the time they would remain there forever. Well, no, they removed them in the late 1990s, of course. And then the Illinois Railway Museum took them over, supposedly saved and are now preserved there, where you can read about them here. Here, meaning 404, page not found. So I would be shocked, personally, if they're still there today, just knowing what we know. For anyone that wants to check it out, it is located at 7000 Olson Road, Union, Illinois, right?
We need confirmation. Did anybody go there, and do they still have that ancient railroad station, cart, whatever it is? They got like a train or a cart, I don't know what it is, that used to go in these ancient underground tunnels, and it's supposed to be over there at the museum, but they was like, nah, we better not do this. This is covering up the reset way too much. You know what I'm saying? This is a direct link to the reset technology.
Right outside of a town called Marengo. Very interesting stuff. I would love to know if those carts are still there, or if they would tell us that they ever had them, and if they would have a further story about them. So this story continues on to say that on April 13th, 1992, what some have called the Chicago Flood began, where contractors accidentally disturbed the clay surrounding one of the freight tunnels. Of course they did. Do you think this was an accident? You gotta let me know in the comments. Where the leak wasn't taken seriously at first, where it turned into a breach near the Chicago River, with eventually hundreds of millions of gallons of water flowing into the tunnel system and into the sub-basements of many Chicago buildings. Again, I'm gonna ask, knowing what we know, do you think this was an accident? Or do you think this was a destruction project where a man named Bruce had his 15 minutes of fame because he was the only recognized expert on the tunnel system, where the great majority of people, of course, had no idea such a thing even existed? Where I think that 20 to 30 years later, now, we may be right back to that point, showing how fast people forget things, showing that the majority of people, yet again, need to be shown these tunnels and understand what is below their feet.
Now, by September, they had built a complete ramp. I'd like to see that happen today this fast. I'd like to see that happen today this fast. 40 feet of water, and there's another 2 floors below that. And there's another 2 floors below that. For me, it started back in high school and college, and one day the light bulb went off. Gee, my dad is the night supervisor at Marshall Fields. Maybe they have an opening. And they did. And they did. There's water in the Pittsfield building, and Marshall Fields, and the City Hall, and this place and that place. And we don't know where it's coming from. And I thought, I know. All those places had one thing in common. All older buildings, all older buildings, all older buildings, all older buildings that were connected to the freight tunnels still.
And a very interesting note here, down at the bottom of the article, where on September 1st, 2000, the Central Electric Railfans Association hosted a rare inspection tour of parts of the underground tunnel system. Unfortunately, we are told that this is not likely to be repeated anytime soon. On the wake of something that happened in 2001, there are now security concerns. The old tunnel system, a vital part of Chicago's infrastructure, a vital part of the old world, our true history, our true past, is now closed off from public access. Now, it is very possible that these tunnels were found, connecting the old world buildings together, connecting underground real estate, structures, as we were told, finding these tunnels, and then our civilization constructed their form of transportation throughout this system, with the railways being laid after finding these tunnels. This is a possibility, but in my opinion, there is one thing that is for sure, is that these tunnel systems, these structures that we are unable to see now, have been there for a very long time, much longer than we have been told. And they are still here from the previous civilization, a civilization that was here only a few hundred years ago, in my opinion. Using electric locomotives in the underground tunnel. Very interesting. Naming this the Great Chicago Tunnel from 1908. Do you live here in this area today? Here's a public map, the one that they are showing us, from 1915, of the Chicago tunnel system that sits right below your feet today. Remember, there are thousands of miles of tunnel systems in this city alone. So this is obviously not everything, not even close, but it does show that there is much more below our feet right now. With another map titled Chicago Freight Tunnel System, Underground Transportation. Zooming in, we can see that the public was allowed to know that they are 40 feet below the surface of Chicago.
40 feet of water, and there's another 2 floors below that. 40 feet of water, and there's another 2 floors below that.
And pass under the river 11 times, holding 734 intersections, 26 private connections. Very interesting. Probably more than that. What do you think? Going on to the back of this thing, where it tells us that many warehouses and stores have direct private connections with the tunnels. These connections consist of approaches, switches, shafts, and elevators, which carry the tunnel cars to the levels above. And this is where things get very interesting, if they haven't been already. How tunnels are built in In many of these cases, the tunnel connection was a part of the original plan of building construction. Do I need to read that again? I will anyway. Was a part of the original plan of building construction. This was done on purpose, and I have not seen one time in a narrative where they tell us about the construction of a building's tunnel system, where it should definitely say that according to this document, where they state that that was a part of the building's construction. There has not been a single time that the narrative has explained how this was done, or even mentioned that a tunnel was connected to the building. Was this an attempt to hide that these buildings now hold this tunnel system? A tunnel system that is massive, right under our feet, that is no longer available to the public after 2001. Can you see that these tunnel systems may be used for something else now? You tell me. Again, I'll ask, now knowing what we know, where are we really? Do we fully understand that there are more than just hallway-type tunnels right under our cities?
I even found the name of the chef, but not a word about what they were served. Not a word about what they were served.
The ones that we are shown and told about, where I believe that we are past this point in our knowledge. I think we know that there is so much more below the ground. Structures, rooms, buildings, places that we are definitely not allowed to go or ever see. If they have hallways, they have more.
This building was probably about 12 stories and had almost as many floors below ground as above. Some buildings in the loop had their basements lowered so they could meet the tunnel. This is one of them. I believe this is one over at near Monroe and Wabash, where they've actually lowered the basement.
These underground tunnels, bases, these are not new ideas, and we know this. And we have seen a lot of lies, but this one is the biggest of them all. Telling us that no other city has tunnels. Are you kidding me? We know that they do. We have seen this. This is from a pamphlet issued probably, maybe. It might have been in the early 1940s, but they can't seem to remember anything from 80 years ago. By the Chicago Tunnel Company to advertise its services to local businesses and railways. So I'm gonna ask you all a question. Do you really think that the tunnels are all done now? Do you think they haven't been expanded? Do you think that in the last 100 years, they just stopped making tunnels? Or do you think that Chicago has an even bigger, more in-depth underground system than we could ever imagine? Do you think every city might have this? Let me know.
They are in Wabash over at the Palmer House. What's really odd is I found this photo long after I had taken this photo at the exact same location.
17 East Monroe Street, Chicago, Illinois. We have the Palmer House Hotel, where we are told that there have been multiple Palmer House hotels on this exact same site. When the first Palmer House was built as a wedding present in September of 1870, because we all know that building a massive hotel in downtown Chicago and giving it away as a wedding present in the 1800s was very normal. This was a common gesture back then. Thankful for all of your support, and we have a lot more incredible stuff on the way. We're just getting started. The Illinois Tunnel Company. What a name. We have tunnel systems documented on atlasobscura.com stating that these tunnels are connected to these buildings that I'm going to name right now. The City Hall, which we know, Merchandise Mart, the Federal Reserve Bank, the Chicago Tribune Building, the Civic Opera House, the Field Museum, and dozens of others, where they were pumping tunnel air into theaters and hotels as natural air conditioning. Going back to the Field Museum, if you want to check out Old World Order, the awesome documentary put out by Sean Hibbler over on the Stu Peters Network on Rumble. Sean and I went into the Field Museum and talked to the security guard. He let us know that there was water underneath the building. A great documentary. In 1959, the Chicago Tunnel Company went out of business, of course, and sold everything for $64,000. To who? Who bought this company and acquired all of their assets, or the old world's assets? According to the Chicago Tribune, the city assumed control of the tunnel system So there we have it, where we find out that more buildings are connected, or they used to be, when in the early 1940s, the subway cut it off from the major department store clients along State and Dearborn, such as the Boston store. They have an underground tunnel. Carson Perry Scott got one too. The Fair, the Davis store, Mandel Brothers, and F.W. Woolworth and Company. All of these buildings got a tunnel back then, all connecting these buildings. And we of course remember the accidental flood from 1992, where it was of course an accident. Wait, what is this? A court case where it was revealed that the city was aware the tunnel was leaking before the flood. And the city basically allowed it to happen, where they knew it was leaking and did not properly maintain the tunnel, allowing for the breach and the destruction of the tunnel. Very interesting information. I wonder why they allowed it in 1992, where we are told that a man named George W. Jackson led the Illinois Tunnel Company. And when you begin to dig into this guy's narrative, it begins to reveal everything. When we find an article in the Chicago Examiner from January 1909, this entire operation, this company, is tied to something very strange here. Remember when we were told the public map in 1910? Well, right before 1910, an event took place in 1909, 1 year before. The cost of construction had bankrupted the Illinois Tunnel Company, which is the exact same year. All a coincidence, of course, that this event took place as well. 1909, same year. 67 didn't make it by fire in an unprecedented lake disaster. Flames follow explosions. All of this happening 2 miles from the shore, inside the tunnels, where 48 were recovered. And it is known that many others are beneath the surface of the lake. Again, I'm going to ask you all, are we sure that these fire narratives are what they are? Are they not nods telling us what they found? I'm simply asking questions.
So let me get this straight. We have an underground railroad system under Lake Michigan. All these old Tartarian buildings that you see, guarantee, have either a catacomb. If they're a cathedral, the cathedrals have the catacombs. But if you see a normal Tartarian-like structure, best believe that there's some type of railroad system underground connecting all of them.
Because we have seen so many times these questions end with answers. Exact identification will probably never be made of many of them, for most of them are headless, burned or dismantled, all connected to George W. Jackson Company. Were these bones found within the tunnels, possibly bones of the past, and explained away with this narrative, trapped in the tunnel 160 feet below the ground? A fire that was actually an explosion, according to Chicagoology.com, where the source of the fire is that an explosion happened 3 minutes before the flames. Destruction of the past? Destruction of what they found? Where the dates are exact. And now switching from the Illinois Tunnel Company to the Chicago Tunnel Company, where another idea that I'm going to throw out there right now is that, is it possible that these tunnel systems were of course there from the past, from the previous civilization, but did these tunnels hold things inside them? Things that we have seen in episodes 72 and 78. Were these tunnel systems found underneath Chicago? Thousands of miles of tunnels. Where else have we seen this? Odessa? Paris? What are inside those tunnels today? Have these tunnels in Chicago been cleaned out of what was once there and then given a new purpose? What are we finding? The deeper we go, the more information we gather. Thinking logically, why would they go through the trouble to create thousands of miles of tunnels under the city when they had dirt roads, creating all of these tunnels and only to use them from 1904 to 1959, using them for only 55 years, and then blocking them off to the public?
without a doubt, they found those tunnels. It's starting to make sense, guys. I'm telling you, all those stories we heard of the Underground Railroad for slavery, I'm telling you, I'm not buying the entire slavery story, but I will tell you some parts stick out that, the Underground Railroad system with Harriet Tubman, they knew about these tunnels. They knew how to access them, and they trying to cover it up and get rid of them. Unbelievable. Drop your comments below. Shout out to my lunch break for that incredible video as always.
Can we just go down this crazy rabbit hole together? So if you're unaware, there is a treaty signed. Basically, the first one gave the North Pole to the U.S. government, right? So we have all the control over it. But then there is another, international treaty that protects it. No satellites are allowed to publish images of the North Pole or the very top of the Earth. Some believe that it might be because it's a hollow Earth, but I see where they blacked everything out, but there's these little strips. I'm wondering, did they screw up? Is this what they're hiding from us? And what is this? Okay, so we have, land. You can see chunks of ice in the water, like icebergs. Very, very cool. It almost looks like it comes over a storm system of some sort, but we have more land. We have more ice. Some of the details aren't as clear on here. And so now we're getting more to the center. Okay, so see, there's more land here. Again, it's greeny, but, you just saw the other pieces where it was green. You could see it was land and clouds. And you saw those sand-colored clouds. I'm going to show you something else here in a second about the sky. Should just drop off into a hole. Look. Hey, it looks like the land just sort of slips right down. It's not a camera, it's how there's just graphic imaging because it's been covered up twice. What is going on here? But seriously, did they skip? Look, you can see icebergs. You can see them. This is crazy. Seriously, but what could they possibly be hiding there? Okay, so you can obviously see a mountain range, something else. If you also don't know, there's tons and tons of military bases there. There's also an underground military base. And, okay, so this is just black. It's like a little hole right here. And then it just ends, which I find really interesting. But then there's these weird, it looks like the bottom of a table or stripper, dare I say. A flag, perhaps. Is this a ladder for the giants? What is this? Another flag? That's kind of weird, right? Keep in mind, I'm 700 meters up, 400 meters up. Tell me this for a camera. Okay, say you saw in that one strip where it almost looked like a sand-colored, storm coming in, right? So I am clicking on the land, street view, as far in as I can to the center. Look at that. Look at that. That's a sand-colored cloud range, right? And is it just me, or is the horizon really squished like a flat torso now? Could this be a camera? But tell me this isn't lining of it. If you have sand-colored clouds above, we saw sand-colored clouds in that strip. There's the mountain ranges I was telling you about. This is crazy. This is really crazy. But here's another thing. Look, there the bird. Kind of looks like your average seagull. But, think about how big that bird must have been to get it that huge, that clear. Look at this. It's
Program is predictive if one knows what to look for. The program is predictive if one knows.
That's it for today's video. If you made it this far, the code word is underground. Be sure to type underground into the comments so I know you're not a bot and you're a real one. You made it all the way to the end. You really rock with me. You just aren't here for entertainment purposes. You actually support me for these reactions, and I love you guys for it. And I just thank you guys for everything. I'm going to see you guys. What's today? I don't even know what day it is. Sunday? Monday? I'm going to see you guys tomorrow. Same time, same place on these waters. So make sure you got your oxygen tanks filled up. Make sure you got your quantum batteries charged. Bring an extra dilithium, because these going into hollow earth, we need the correct amount of boosters to get us back home. So guys, this oh my god, Dulce Base, hollow earth, Genghis Khan, man. I literally don't have these plans. I be diving into these, and then it'd be something else pop up, something else pop up. I'm like, damn, there's no end to these waters. It's your boy Jet Ski Chuck signing out. Peace.